Hello and welcome to today's edition of Severe Thunderstorm Outlooks. It's July 1st. I'm meteorologist Ted Keller. The ring of fire, so to speak, is still very much intact. In fact, they've kind of upped the percentages a little bit here. The high pressure area in the center of this screen, which is where the air is all circulating around, looks like this. So there's a lot of sinking motion here that prevents thunderstorms of any organized fashion from forming. And the jet stream winds, which is what basically I call a supercell glue. Like that's one of the things that's required to get supercells is that you have enough difference in shear from the ground to the jet stream level, basically, to be able to tilt storms and get them so they don't collapse on themselves. That's basically what we're looking at here. Now, this is an upgrade to this outlook down in the south today to the slight risk level 2. New England is looking about the same. This was enhanced this morning and in the late morning update, rather. And I believe this was a slight risk before, but if it wasn't, it is now. So obviously the largest risk area is in this level 3 area. Enhanced is what they call it. And this is primarily a wind risk, but there's hail and tornado risks associated with this as well. But you're looking at the maximum threat level in Rochester, in Wausau, Appleton. Now, Green Bay doesn't show up on here for some reason, but it certainly should. and all those areas. Madison is down here. This is Wisconsin Dells right here. So that just kind of gives you the general area. Northern Iowa is included in this as well. And so what we have here is a tornado risk at 5% of any strength tornado within 25 miles of any point. So that's basically in the enhanced risk area, but not totally, only in this part of it. Not extending over to here, at least not the highest risk area. And again, the black hatching, it just is the SPC's new variable that tells you what the probabilities of intensity are. So again, it weighs very heavily on the weaker side of tornadoes, but there is about a 20% or 1 out of 5 chance of an EF2 or greater, with that heavily weighted, of course, toward EF2. So we'll see what happens there. It's one of those situations, again, where this is so common in the summer months where you have morning convection, morning clusters of storms, which in and of themselves can be awfully severe sometimes. That's now tracing itself through this part of Wisconsin here. And then later on today, where will the boundary set up? The jet stream is there. So what is going to happen? So this is what they've come up with late in the morning. NATOcast agrees with the 5% assessment, expands it a little bit more, I believe. But basically the same exact area from northern Iowa through that little sliver of southeast Minnesota right over to Green Bay. Then on the severe wind risk side of things for today, a hatched area means that you have these probabilities here. So under 74 miles per hour is under hurricane force. So we're talking about pretty high risk here of any wind gusts being somewhere between the 59 miles per hour and the 74 miles per hour. Only about a 10% chance it'll get slightly above that. And we've been seeing wind risks, wind reports like this over the last several days. I put a Facebook post up that showed you what the wind gusts were yesterday. We had several 80 mile per hour wind gusts out through Kansas and Nebraska. So basically this same weather system has shifted to this area. So that's a thing. And the highest percentage of any severe wind risk, 59 miles per hour or greater, is 30%, which is not too shabby for the 1st of July. On the hail risk side, yes, it does exist. So again, the probability of getting any severe hail is highest in these yellow areas, but that's only 15%. But what this is saying is even if your probability is lower, like right here, for example, the size of the hail is roughly going to be about the same intensity level, meaning size, basically. So you got, again, a heavily weighted about an 83% chance of it being under 2 inches, about a 50-50 chance of it being between 1 and 1.5 inches where it does occur. CSU is showing the tornado risk almost in exactly the same place. Doesn't get as excited about the 5% risk back into Iowa, but it certainly is in that same part of Wisconsin and also up into the UP of Michigan, where they had a tornado warning yesterday. I was kind of shocking to see that and a funnel cloud report. I just don't see that in the UP of Michigan very often. So that sums up Wednesday. Now going into Thursday, this same area here, that level 2 basically area stretches from parts of Michigan, but southern and central Wisconsin, sweeping all the way back into North and South Dakota. And again, I think there's always time for this to be updated in the morning tomorrow to slight risk areas where you don't see them yet. And then on the tornado risk side of things, we have a 5% risk basically from Sioux Falls and Sioux City back into Mitchell and Pierce, South Dakota. In that area there, O'Neill, Nebraska is also included in that for Thursday. On the wind risk side, the highest probability of wind gusts, again, 80+% chance it'll stay below hurricane force wind. But when the SPC bothers to note it, it does mean that they're keeping a maybe closer eye on it with that broad 15% chance, as you see in the yellow. Same with the hail, pretty broad 15% chance. But almost everybody, including lower chance areas, having the same probability to get the same size of hail, which is primarily under an inch and a half. And so if we're looking at CSU's outlook, we have the tornado risk up in the Dakotas primarily for Thursday, hail, the same place, and then the wind risk kind of shifts with what is perceived to be probably a line of storms that forms here that would affect possibly Milwaukee, the northern suburbs of Chicago, around Rockford, those areas on over into parts of lower Michigan. Then on Friday, still have a slight risk here, slight risk on day 3, which is what they consider Friday, is not too shabby, especially again as we're getting into the early part of July. This is really a pretty active and organized pattern. You get thunderstorms in the summer, but they're typically not as organized or, quite frankly, showing up in the U.S. They usually go up into Canada or maybe off into the Northwest. But this is showing up still around Nebraska and South Dakota. That's a slight risk for Friday. I was looking at StormNet. It didn't really get too excited about tornado probabilities today or tomorrow, but on Friday, amazingly, it does have these two little bullseyes. They're not real intense, but northern Wisconsin, UP, and Michigan, and around northeast Nebraska showing up for Friday. That's for the 1 p.m. to 1 a.m., so that 12-hour time frame, basically late afternoon and evening on Friday. If we look at CSU's outlook, they go back to Wisconsin again with the tornado risk, and then a little more subdued on the hail and wind with only 10% probability showing up. And so for the SPC to take notice, they would want to have a 15% probability at this distance. So the same here. And I may have stated that. Oh, that is correct. I'm sorry. So yeah, 15 is the yellow. So this kind of gives you a head up as to what might happen. Again, SPC has not pulled the trigger or anything. It would show up on the right. But just as kind of a heads up for the 4th of July weekend. And then Sunday, it definitely shifts to the eastern seaboard, Pennsylvania down to North Carolina. And then on Monday, almost the exact same area. And finally, we'll wrap up with NIU's forecast. This pretty much sums up the next 7 days. This is a supercell composite. Basically, they take the percentage chance of a supercell storm, which is really going to be your primary severe weather producer. Doesn't discriminate hail, wind, or tornado, just blanks it. And it adds it up cumulatively at each pixel for a week. So it's not a specific forecast, but a general trend. So for the next, 7 days, and I don't think I updated these. No, I do that sometimes. Okay, so that obviously needs to say July 1st through the 6th. And again, this is going to be wrong, but you can read it down here. This is the 8th through the 14th, staying in almost the exact same area. And then finally, by the later portion of July, again, we'll cross that out. And just read it right here. 15th through the 21st. Finally, what appears to be a kind of a subdued pattern at least, but still kind of that same area. This is kind of saying that I think there's room for this to have higher probabilities later, whereas the cooler air masses are hanging out up here, and you would expect that smack dab in the middle of summer.